to Kathy Foley if she's here.
I'm here.
Professor. Yes, thank you very much. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so let me get into this PowerPoint. I'm going to change, and as I listen to all of you, I'm not a scientist. All of the detail that you can go into the grain and things like that, I deal only with the surface of things. You are deep structure. But I thought you might be interested to know something about the Lord of the Forest in Southeast Asia, and specifically the island of Bali. So I'm going to be talking about wooden masks of the Barong, which is this lion character, and Calonarang, which is this tusk demonic type character, which affects purification. If you have any great disease, wars, all of the things that we are dealing with right now, these wooden masks are bought up from the temple, and they can help humans visualize all the terrible things that they are dealing with and deal with them. So you get past and through. So there's basically three characters that I'll be talking about. One is the witch, which is the war in Ukraine, the coronavirus, all of those kinds of things, is the Rangda, or the widow character, who is a manifestation of the goddess Durga. The second is this lion character, who starts out as a noble priest to deal with the pandemic and disruption. And then there is the community. So these people who are stabbing themselves represent what is going on in the community. So the wild woman is the widow witch. It's always played by a man, because women cannot be terrifying enough to manifest this side of the cosmos, who starts out as a regular human being, but when you need the masks, the wood is for the transformation that can blow up from human violence into the cosmic. So this character will be replaced by the mask of Rangda, the goddess Durga, who is the first principle who created the universe. To balance her, you need these lion-like men. And this is Resi Barada, who's right here, and his follower Bahula. And he will transform in the second half of the play into this lion character, the Barong. And then he's accompanied by these young men. They're sort of like a martial arts troupe, who then turn their krises upon themselves. They will not bleed or things like that. And this character of the lionine man represents protection and is also called Banaspati Raja. That is the king of the forest. He represents what the forest, the environment is, how it is wild and can be a little bit scary, but is really protective and embracing if human beings learn how to use it well. It has a lot more mythological things to do with it. If we have enough time, I will explain. It's really, in human terms, it is the afterbirth that gave each of us life. It's that sort of wild, wiggly, full of blood and vitamin things that we live off of when we're coming into the world. And very often an afterbirth is buried outside of your house, or if you want your children to go to London and study, you could take it and throw it into the river to go down to the ocean and help them travel. But the afterbirth is something you never live without, that wildness, that energy, and that is what the Lord of the Forest is in simple personal human terms. I better keep moving. The third component in any performance is the community, and it is these Chris dancers, but there's also one iconic figure to represent the illness or the discord that is in the universe, and that is the corpse who is goes through an actual funeral rite. Sometimes recently, they've actually been burning the people who had volunteered to be the corpse. But during the performance, it is brought on to represent everything that is going awry in the community. That person is taken over to the cemetery and has to stay there. And if witches or bad trouble or psychic scariness does evil to that corpse, then that person, if they are not using the right mantra, is thought to be in a state of suspended animation. People will say they stop breathing, all these other kinds of things. Sometimes recently, for spectacular things, they've been burying the corpse in a grave, a thin one, I assume. But it is this dance drama that is really about ritual protection from the community. Some of the doctors think that it's about plague and cholera and all of those other kinds of things, but is these two wooden masks of Rangda and Barong, which both play a part in the protection. So the negative one attacks us, but eventually that is the mask that has to enter the cemetery after all the people go away and use this cloth, it's her kareb, to wipe over the corpse to represent our resurrection from all of our troubles. So there can be many stories for this. The most common one is of the witch Rangda, that just means widow, who transforms into this character. She has a daughter who is beautiful, but no one will marry her. Bahula, the son of Barada, that's the priest, comes and gets her magic book so that people can understand the mantra of the really powerful magic. And that is how she is eventually defeated, turned back into her good side. She's not really negative. So the story of this Rangda character, who was supposed to be an actual queen witch in the 12th century, is from Kadiri as its place, but in the 15th century, the kings from here, as Islam moved over to Bali, and that's supposed to be when this story came. The first accounts that we have of it tend to be during the Dutch period. The Dutch took over in 1906. And so these are some of the earliest images that they have of Rangda and the Barong. And these are early things. The marriage of this witch character with the lion dance is actually only thought to be about 100 years old. So the masks are all older. And there is some thought that Chinese influence from the north coast of lion dance is what brought the Barong in as the current lion character. This is a performance. It usually happens once a year in each village as part of the sweeping away of trouble, but it can be happening every Kanchen Kilowan, that's every 15 days. So the dark and the bright of the moon tend to be days associated with Shiva. And that's when you clean your house and sweep away all negativity. This is a larger one that is for the whole village. These masks are kept in the temple on the south side of the village. And when you're going to make a new mask, the whole community participates in the process. And, some people are out collecting the raffia or the leaves that are going to be parts of the characters' bodies. It's the skilled wood carvers who are going to be in charge of the actual carving and overseeing the painting. But the whole community has a process. Some people will just be cooking for all these people who are making a new barang. And every 15 days, you're going to have offerings for these masks, which are in the temple across from the cemetery and the burning ground. They are also bought out at certain other times into the community, the representation of these. So going beyond the village for the whole island, Nyepi is a ceremony every 210 days, which is sort of about getting a whole island free of negativity. So you bring out very large images, or you may take your Calonarang masks on a parade to let them scream out, so they're not going to be after you for the next 210 days. There's lots of noise, and these large structures that are created are then burnt away. You don't burn the real masks because they're sacred, and I'll talk a little bit about the making of them. Another event that brings out the lying character will be Galungan. That's the period when the ancestors return, again, every 210 days. And that's when all the young men in the village will be parading with the lions, and they get donations from people. There are many lions will meet other lions and will be dancing on the road. So let's talk a little bit about the making of the mask. The process of getting the wood is a spiritual one as well as physical one. It has to be on an auspicious day. It is cut from a living tree. The kapu is the mask that is preferred for the barong. There are specific trees that will be grown by the cemetery, old trees, sacred trees who get offerings over a longer period of time. And you don't, generally for mask, you don't want to kill the tree, so you're taking off part of the tree, and you ask the tree in advance with specific mantra according to your village to use it. Then everyone is working for a period of time. Pule, or Alstonia scolaris, is for many of the less important masks, and kepu is the one that is preferred for the barong. These are the kinds of implements that you would be using for the creation of them, taking off the bark. It's usually the skilled carvers, and it will be the most skilled carvers who come from lineages of people who have carved Barong or Calonarang masks who make them. Ordinary people, if you're going to make a sacred mask, you have to do it right. So you need to study that. These are some of the topeng, which also have a sacred function, but it's not as important as what the Calonarang and Barong are. So you see, generally they hold the mass with their feet. Nowadays, you may see some people signing inside. This is a mass by Ida Bagus Alit, who is a very important sort of priest topeng dancer. And you'll see that it has some kind of mantra that may be written inside the nose or other things like that. Those will vary according to the character. Once you have made the mask with the participation of the village, and there's like 50 coats of paint that you do it for these specific masks that are far beyond the ones that you can buy, which are quite beautiful as tourists, or the regular topeng masks. You really want these masks to be charged with power, and therefore to get that taksu or spiritual power, you take it to the cemetery at night. You check the right date. It will be a group of people who have been involved within the making of it. They do their meditation and praying, and there's supposed to be a ball of fire which crosses the sky and enters the mask if you have done things correctly. Later on, there are old masks, and you have the opportunity. You can make new masks if for any reason you want one for your village. But if you are just going to be repairing them, which is what most people do, they will decommission them by doing a ceremony to say sort of turn your taksu off for the interim, because otherwise you can't handle these masks with your ordinary hands or put your feet near them. And and then they are worked on, and then they would be recharged in the same way by this sort of ceremony of taking it to the cemetery and dealing with it. These are some important mask makers right now, and some villages will just go to these top people. Other villages may have the tradition of one family within their village who is responsible for the carving of these. This is Idebagus Anand Suryawan, who's very important. And here's Iwayan Tangu. Here's the Barong mask, the lion mask. This is human hair, and this beard is used within the performance ceremony for you dip it into the holy water that you're making, and that holy water helps people come out of trance. People will also hold on to the beard of this character. So this is what they look like at night when you're out in the temple. This is Juro America. There's a wonderful article by Lauren Kendall of the American Museum of Natural History about this mask that an artist brought back to the States, but it caused him too much trouble. Must have been a blessed mask. So he gave it back and tends to be a very strong follower of the demon Rangda, who's right over here on the side, and you see the Barong behind them. So this mask has all kinds of permutations in popular culture and modern art, as well as being the sacred ceremony that is done within a village once a year. This was a dance drama done by Sadarno Kusumo, who's the top choreographer in Java, who had a performance of 100 villagers from Teges and then made it into a movie version after touring it around the country and taking it abroad. But usually when you do that, you don't use sacred masks. You don't do the thing at the cemetery because you don't want to be on an airplane anywhere with a sacred mask in your luggage. This is a performance that's done by Savitri, who is a very important aristocrat from a Brahmin family. She decided to do a feminist version where the woman is actually a priest and the male is bad. So as a modern drama version, having studied all of the palm leaf manuscripts, the Lontar, she did this particular piece. Also, this is by a Javanese Calonarang, the story of a woman's sacrifice to patriarchy was a popular both book, and it was really about, during the Suharto presidency, Megawati, who is the daughter of the first president, was leading a political party, and that party was being busted up, sent to prison, all of those kinds of things. So she was doing, again, a feminist version of this particular character. This is another contemporary dance drama by Bulan Jelantik, who is a Balinese princess. Again, she dared to put on the mask and dance out a female version of this. And that's her dancing probably in the large performance venue in Singapore. She again toured it internationally. We also see this associated with some of the New Age movement in Bali. This is Gusti Ngurah Harta, who again is a politician and has this large martial arts group throughout Bali, Java, and internationally. I think there's some people in Europe, and they very often participate in this particular ceremony with heavy duty Chris dancing with the Barong there to protect him. So all of this leads us to recognize that there's this character of the lion. We see it not only in Indonesia, the Ketiri Muka, which is the head that comes out of the third eye of Shiva, is often above temple gates, both in Bali and in India. Narasimha is trance dance that you find in Orissa. Narasimha is an incarnation of Vishnu, who is protecting against the demon Hiranyakasipu. As I mentioned before, we see this connection of young men, martial arts, and the lion, certainly within Chinese culture. It may be that the Barong comes from there. Throughout Java, there's forms like the Singa Singa An during circumcisions. Little boys are danced on lion figures, or this is a trance dance you have in West Java where people turn into the lion. This is Reog Ponorogo, in which the Chris dancers go into trance, walk on fire, eat glass, all of those kinds of things. So the Barong is a local version of that. And people have lots of books of mantra that help them as they do this performance, help them as they do the process of making their masks, and ask the protection of the gods as they enter into this ceremony. For lack of time, I would talk about how this face of the lion appears on gamelan instruments above temple walls. We find it on the Tree of Life puppet that is used within the shadow puppet theater, which has the Kala head here, and you see the Kala head there. This is really the same character as Barong. Sometimes these will have Kala heads at each of the chakra points to get above. So there's something about this lion character's protection. This is a performance that uses that story, and supposedly the Dalong has one hand that goes into trance as the lion character, the other hand, which is holding the demon, and where he wants to get is to the center, which is what this Tree of Life puppet represents, which is both the power of the left and right throughout. Again, if I had a longer time, I would talk how this probably relates to things like the white snake story and the priest abbot. There's similarities there. The dojoji story that we find in Japan. This seems to be a variant of a widespread myth that moved with Hindu Buddhism, of how there are two in opposition. It's called Ra Benida in Indonesia, but yin yang, of course, would be interrelated with that. And what is important for wood people is that this demonic face, it seems to me demonic, is Vanaspati Raja, the Lord of the forest, who protects us. Wildness is not necessarily bad. We as human beings have to learn how to work with it and move from the macrocosm to the microcosm. The image of the afterbirth that comes into the world with us as human beings allows us to understand all of our powers that exist in the world. And by working in balance with that power of the Vanaspati Raja, the Lord of the forest, we can move on. I'm not going to read you all of the mantra here, but I will say the one takeaway, this is wood is good. Vanaspati has its place in the north, and it's realized within Balinese dance drama in the form of the Barong. It is the guard of the large trees, such as the Kepu, the Banyan, and others. This is from a lontar, a palm leaf manuscript that is kept by the priest, that reminds us the tree, the forest, is like our protective brother, our older brother, our powerful protection. And we need to do that and understand that if we are going to live happily in the world, that can allow us to return from our sickness back to our divine, this Pacific form. And it's for this reason that the Balinese police were using Calonarang and her minions to go out and do coronavirus education. So I thank you. I hope I haven't run over too much.
A little bit, but never mind. Thank you very much.